And welcome, everybody. It's Saturday, June 13th, 2026, and this is season 5 and episode 20 of Two Guys on Politics, broadcast on the U.S. Arab Radio Network on WNZK AM 690 radio, as well as on YouTube at twoguysonpolitics.com. I'm Ray Hanania with my co-host, former Congressman Bill Lipinski. We got a list of things we're going to talk to. We'll try to run through all this stuff. On top of the list, of course, is Iran. I guess peace is at hand between the Trump and the new Ayatollah in Iran. We'll see how long that lasts. There's some reports of insider trading taking place among some of Trump's buddies. They're making a fortune every day. He says it's over, it started, we're at war, we're not at war. You can make a lot of money if you know ahead of time what's going on. We also saw that Trump was forced to take his name off the Kennedy Center, but he's really fighting hard. He got permission to keep the UFC ring, the Ultimate Fighting Championship stage, to stay in front of the White House. We have a federal judge also ordered Trump to restore his anti-Wokeism, removal of statues and plaques at national parks. I don't know what's going on in this world today, Bill. And then we have the June 9th primary election results. This controversy with Graham Platner, who is the oyster farmer who won the Democratic nomination in Maine for the Senate. He's up against a gold standard of politicians, Suzanne Collins, a Republican. And what does that say about the Democratic Party? I think more than anything, than even the election. And then in the second segment, we'll talk about the storms that we just recently had here in the Chicago area. I don't know. I didn't hear Governor Pritzker, so we'll come out and say anything about it. We'll talk a little bit about the World Cup fever, FIFA fever, that's taking place across the U.S. And we'll end it with Bill talking about his latest column that he wrote at courageousthought.com. Ray Hanania will be right back right after these messages. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and the next voice you hear will be Mr. Courageous himself, Ray Hanania.
You know, Bill, I feel bad that I haven't spent more time uh, following President Trump's we're at peace, we're at war, we're at peace, we're at war. It's like a ping pong game going on here because apparently a lot of people are making money on the stock market, with all this. One day we're at peace. I think somebody said he announced a peace deal 12 times just in the last 2 months. We have peace. We don't have peace. I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to hold back. It's confusing and worrisome for me. He doesn't present the case of somebody that knows what he's doing. With this war, are you worried about it? Do you care about it anymore, Bill?
Well, first of all, I think it's something like 32 times that he said we were close to a deal. Now, I think he does that. I don't know if his friends are making money or not. I'm not going to go into that. But what I am going to go into is I think he says that in order to get the economy, the stock market to continue to do well. Okay, so he can continue to say we have the greatest economy in the
Right,
history of the world. And that's fine. If you're invested in the stock market, you're
right.
making an enormous amount of money. But how many Americans are really invested in the stock market? And how many of them are invested to any significant degree? I don't think it's much. So even though he keeps saying that in order to build up his popularity, I don't think it's doing him any good whatsoever. Uh, and as you know, and as I've said, I supported this war because I wanted to see regime change, okay? I wanted to see regime change. I wanted to see them not be able to have any nuclear weapons. I want to get rid of all the nuclear dust that they have. And now, once again, we are at the end of the road here. We are going to end this war by a memorandum of understanding.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It's like a
Okay?
business deal. It's a business deal. It's not
It's not a peace treaty. It's a
right.
memorandum of
You ever
understanding.
hear of a war end on a memorandum of understanding as opposed to a peace accord that's signed by both sides?
No, I have not. So
That's
I
a
do not
strange
have much
way to,
confidence in this ending the war whatsoever. Uh,
God, this guy.
I understand the memorandum of understanding makes it perfectly clear that the Strait of Hormuz will be open again, that there'll be no collected, there'll be no firing at any ships or anything like that. It'll be perfectly free and open, which will be terrific, just as it was before we invaded.
It
Okay.
was open, it was free. Ships were going through there like crazy, up until Trump decided to attack Iran, killing 246 girls at a girls' school. We've kind of brushed that off from history. You know what? They're Iranians. Who
You
cares,
don't
right?
worry about it, Ray. You have not brushed it off.
No, I won't. I won't because, if this had been October 7th, this is October 7th for Iran. So, we could sit there and it's easy to write off some life. But yeah, it's just how many times that he makes it sound like there was a problem at the Strait of Hormuz. Technically, there wasn't. I mean, the real problem was the Iranians were funding these satellite conflicts, with through Hezbollah and other terrorist groups. And of course, I think we were doing basically the same thing, but in a different way. But instead of addressing it the right way, we just went to war. And I don't, have we achieved? I mean, the bottom line is, have we achieved anything from this war? Because
Well, I understand that the memorandum of understanding, uh, which has to be finalized in 60 or 90 days, says that they have to dismantle any of their nuclear weapons equipment, number one. Number
right,
two, they have to promise never to buy, steal, build a nuclear weapon, get rid of all their enriched uranium, which no one seems to be able to get ascertained exactly where it is anymore because it's buried so deep in the ground. But we're going to get rid of it. And what is the third one? There's a third one in the memorandum of understanding that would be advantageous to Trump and Americans' position, but I can't remember it right now. But that's in the memorandum of understanding. That's going to be 60 or 90 days. So I say to you once again, is there anything to this or isn't there anything to it?
yeah, I think that other point was the financial relief for
Right.
Iran. They're going to unfreeze billions
Yes.
in Iranian funds, which is kind of ironic because Trump is the one that attacked Barack Obama for doing the exact same thing that they did it, but they didn't do it with a memorandum of understanding, I guess, the way Trump likes to do it. They did it with a peace accord that they signed, and Iran agreed not to build an Iran, nuclear weapon at that time with Obama. And I'm not sure they were going to build a nuclear weapon. I think Trump orchestrated this entire war because he needs it to offset the economy was having problems even before Iran. Last year our economy was having problems under Trump, the guy who said that he was going to bring costs down. We was going to focus on America first. We haven't focused on America first in since the day he got into office. Where it's America last in his mind. We're dealing with every foreign country where he has investments. Every place where we have discussions or an area, he has an investment there. And I think that he only cares about Trump first rather than America first. And I'm really worried about this. This is just a ruse. I have no confidence in him, and I'm hoping that things will change so we can get back to some sanity. But do you think that this? I'm making it. We've reached a peace accord because one day he said I'm going to bomb the hell out of them, and then the next day he said, "Well, I'm not going to be so bad." And he does this late at night, like he's been drinking or something on his social media. Do you think this is him worrying about what impact Iran has on his election chances in November? In other words, do you think he's trying to manipulate things to impact the election the way I think he's trying to manipulate the stock market?
Well, I think he's trying to manipulate the stock market and the economy.
Right.
I don't think even he is naive enough to believe that what happens in Iran between now and the midterm elections is going to be of much help to him whatsoever.
So,
I, I think the Democrats will recapture the House of Representatives. Uh, the Senate, I think right now the Senate is a toss-up. But I don't think that there's anything that Trump can do. If he really ended the war tomorrow and we got every stated goal achieved that the United States said they wanted to achieve, I don't think it'd make any difference. Because I think the only way that war really affects most Americans is at the gas pump. Okay.
right.
Uh, I probably maybe 10%
Well,
of the population is concerned about getting rid of that regime in Iran. The other 90% of the American population doesn't know one regime from another, and they don't
right.
care. They don't want to be bothered with that stuff. They don't want to pay high gas prices. They don't want to pay high grocery prices, and the farmers don't want to pay high prices for their fertilizers. Americans are interested in taking care of themselves, and they wish their government would stay out of their way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the gasoline prices are outrageous, but they're kind of a distraction from the real problem we have in the economy. Food prices have gone up, and I always say this that once somebody increases a price, they never lower it. So there's no positive coming out of his first 2 years in office as president. He's made this country worse, and it's amazing to me how these his MAGA supporters, I think that they're on some kind of drug because they say, "Oh, the economy's great." Really? The economy is the worst it's ever been. But I do think that it's a matter of pride in politics. They just won't admit the damage that he's done, and I don't understand it. Now, on the other side, we were going to talk about this in a moment here. The Democrats make it easy for people to choose Trump over the people like Schumer and a couple of the other Democrats, Cory Booker and Hakeem Jeffries. I don't like any of those three. I don't trust them. And, so I can see how this situation is causing confusion. Who's better? Who's worse? The MAGA people are defending Trump. The haters, the anti-Trump people are attacking him. But I see them both having a real problem. But I have to say, the only satisfaction, Bill, comes out of seeing the federal courts trample all over Trump's dictatorial powers, stripping his name from the Kennedy Center and tackling the UFC, kicking the UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship stage in the face. Although Trump got to keep that, they said he can keep that. But I don't know this whole thing. I mean, is there a bigger picture in all this stuff, or is the Kennedy Center and the UFC just distractions from what's
Well,
happening?
no, I mean, most of the negative stuff that Trump encounters is of his own doing.
Yeah.
Putting his name on the Kennedy Center, firing all the members of the board of directors of the Kennedy Center, uh, putting this ring on the grounds
The
of the
UFC,
White
right?
House for this fight to the death in the cage match. Uh, I mean, none of that stuff is really doing anything to boost America, to help the American people. It's all just for his ego. And I could go on with a number of other things also. His, weaponized fund that we're not really sure it's dead as of yet. The
Right.
the
The
courts said it
1.7.
is, but he could always appeal the courts, and you don't know what happens when it goes to an appellate court, when it goes to the Supreme Court. I mean, his I don't know what his presidency has done to make America great again.
Right,
Okay.
right.
If you can tell me, I'm sure there are some things, because there are some things that once upon a time I supported him on, but he has become such a drag on America, not only domestically but foreign leaders. I refuse to accept anything that he does anymore at all as being advantageous to America. I think it's all advantageous to Donald Trump's ego.
Yeah, we're taping this on Saturday, on the 13th of June. His birthday is Sunday, June 14th. If it had been during the week, I think he would have declared it a national holiday and then erected a statue in his own honor. This guy's ego is unbelievable. It's depressing. I think it's all working against him, though, because, I was never a big fan of Jimmy Kimmel. And I always thought, oh, that it's just bias, one-sided politics. But ever since Trump started attacking Kimmel, I've completely changed my mind. I started looking back and at some of the humor, and I'm thinking, Kimmel was right about this guy. Kimmel is really, and I think that hurts Trump. I think Trump has really undermined his own stuff. I think he's so preoccupied with his own ego that he's abandoned the American people. And I think that's the key that American voters are going to see in November, that he has abandoned America for himself. Everything he does, is for himself. His talk about the UFC, this Ultimate Fighting Championship stage, I think I only saw it one time in a movie where they're in a cage
Yes,
and with a fence around them, and they kick the heck out of each other, punching, kicking. There's no, I'm sure there are some restrictions, but it's terrible. It's very brutal, and I don't understand why he made that. It doesn't make sense to me. Why did he put that in front of the White House? You know what I mean? How about baseball or football or apple pie? Put that in front of the White House. Uh,
absolutely.
this didn't make any sense. And worse is he was talking about how, oh, this is kind of like the Eiffel Tower when they had that fair in France and they built the Eiffel Tower. This UFC Ultimate Fighting stage that he set up is the equivalent of a historic edifice, just like the Eiffel Tower that should last forever. And I'm thinking, you're ruining the White House. This guy has destroyed so much there. I just don't know if I can ever look at the White House the same way I looked at it with so much pride as I did in the past. I can't do that today. This guy's destructive.
I think there's some court that has ruled that he's got to put the East Wing back together again, where he's going to build this ballroom.
How much is that going to cost us as the taxpayers for his mistakes and bad judgment? We don't care. It doesn't seem like we care. Costs don't mean anything. This is a guy who doesn't get a salary, right? As president, he doesn't take a salary
He
because
doesn't.
he has an enormous amount of money. He doesn't care what the economy is. I bet he doesn't buy eggs. He doesn't buy gasoline. We buy it for him. That's why this guy doesn't care. I don't understand how people can defend him. It just makes no sense to me. It's just
Money, money, money.
money. So,
That's how they, that's how they defend them.
and
But
then there's this national parks, right? Where the federal judge ordered Trump to replace and restore all the what they're described as anti-wokeism statues and plaques that address the history of this country through some of these parks. He was editing and censoring the narrative on these plaques, same way he did, at the White House, I think, where he took down the picture of Biden and put a new picture with derogatory remarks about Biden on a public display. It's just horrible stuff that he does. This guy belongs in jail, Bill. Bill, Donald Trump belongs in jail. He doesn't belong in the White House, and it's depressing.
well, it is depressing because he's ruining the image of America in the eyes of the world. And I think that's very, very depressing. I think, though, that Ray, he's losing support even with his base each and every day because the more and more things that he does, the more and more some people start realizing that he talks one way, but he does things another way, and they are for the advantage of Trump and the Trump empire, and not for the United States of America, unfortunately.
Yeah, and normally I would say, and I agree with you with that. I totally agree with you, but normally I would say that would turn the tables on Trump. But the Democrats are doing their best to screw everything up. The leadership is horrible. Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, Hakeem Jeffries, these guys are terrible leaders, in my opinion. I think they're doing a terrible job. We got all these different people that are crazy on the Democratic side that distracts his Trump's base, his MAGA base, from seeing his reality in the destructive profile that it really is. And instead, they turn away from Trump's destruction and they look at the Democrats and they said they're the evildoers. So that's why Trump, I still believe, has a lot of support among some of these hillbillies and right-wing fanatics that are the core base of the MAGA movement. It's just terrible. And
Well, as
Platner
I
was,
said, I think that he's losing support each and every day. But uh, gee, what I was going to say, I lost my train of thought because unfortunately my partner in crime on here went on and on and on, and I should have interrupted him. But maybe it'll come back to me in regards to the Trumper.
we were headed toward the results of the June 9th primary election,
Oh yes,
in
okay.
which Graham Platner, the oyster farmer, with so much controversy, actually won the Democratic nomination in the Maine Senate race, and he's up against Susan Collins, who you've said and others have said is the gold standard of Republic of politics. She's a Republican, a good person, I guess, even though I guess she does support Trump, a lot of the times. But how important doesn't that show?
I think that the Democrats' support of this candidate of theirs in Maine is the absolute height of hypocrisy.
Yeah,
The Democrats have portrayed themselves ever since Donald Trump got reelected as the party that was pure, clean, only interested in what was good for the American people. And now they turn around and they support this guy who has apparently, on occasion, attacked women, certainly spoke very, very poorly about women, has had a Nazi tattoo for a long period of time, and yet they're supporting him. They're saying, well, he's better than Susan Collins. Susan Collins, to a great degree, is the type of legislator I think most people in this country would like to have. Yes, she's a Republican. Yes, she votes most of the time with the Republicans, but she has strayed from that on a number of occasions when she thinks that the Republican Party is wrong. She has also offended President Trump on a number of occasions, and I am sure that if he could have got her knocked off somehow in the Republican primary in Maine, he would have done so. So I think she's a good candidate. I think she's a common sense Republican. But the most important thing about this race is how the holier than thou Democrats are supporting this guy, and they're attacking the guy that's running for Senate in Texas tooth and nail because they don't think that he's that ethical. Well, to me, based upon his record and the guy in Maine's record, I'll take the guy in Texas over the guy in Maine. Believe me.
yeah, and this guy Platner was engaged in some terrible things. That the Nazi the tattoo he has that they said looked like or was similar to a Nazi emblem of white racist. I don't know if it actually is that. I thought, okay, maybe that's just criticism from his critics. But this guy has a pattern of sexually harassing women to the point where he had to sit down with his wife and get marriage counseling to a serious. And there were so many women that came out and criticized Platner for the way he abused them. Now, I don't have all the details of it, but you think that when you see somebody with a problem with gender discrimination, you think that makes them a weak candidate. Instead, voters picked him, right? What they could have chose, somebody else
Well,
in that
the only other
election.
candidate in the race is the governor of Maine, but she dropped out several weeks ago because she didn't think that she could possibly defeat this guy because he was coming on so strong. Unfortunately for her and unfortunately for the people of Maine, she dropped out before many of these problems that he has had have been revealed, to the general public.
Right. So but you think that nobody, are you telling me the Democrats didn't know this about this guy? If you lived in Maine and read the papers there, it was all over, going on forever. And it seemed like the Democratic leadership closed their eyes because they thought, okay, he's flawed, but he's our strongest person. Let's stick with him. They don't back principled people sometimes. And I think that that makes them look bad. And, when you make the Democrats look bad, that makes a bad Republican like Trump look better than he really is. He's not a good person. But you put him in contrast with these Democrats, and it's just terrible. Later on, by the way, for our listeners in our second segment, we're going to talk about this very issue in a column that Bill Lipinski wrote at courageousthought.com, which I urge you to go and read. It was a really good column, but we'll get to that in a little bit later. I think that why don't we stop there, Bill? Unless you have any more thoughts about that, does it going into the November elections?
Just one last thought that I have in regards to the Maine Senate race. Maybe when these revelations started appearing against this guy, there were 4 or 5 uh, Democratic senators that said they wouldn't work with him. They didn't want to see him get elected to the Senate. But as the time has gone on, the leadership has managed to get them back in place by simply saying, well, if he wins, we might be able to control the Senate. So stop criticizing him. Just accept him for what he is, because it's more important that we control the Senate than it is that a Democratic candidate be upright and honest.
Yeah, it's a sad statement about our American politics, Bill. I love America, but our politics is the worst. It's they're saying, look, it's a choice between Donald Trump and a sexual predator, and he's been accused of being a sexual predator and treating women terribly, and it just makes me feel bad that, in a case like that, you have to choose between two bad candidates. And I wish there was another candidate. That's why the Democrats have been lost the last election with Biden, because a lot of the voters ran from the Democratic Party who might have supported a Democratic person who disliked Trump, and ended up voting for third party candidates who couldn't get the vote that they needed, but allowed Trump to win. Bill, why don't we take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll talk about our second topic lineup. We got the storms that hit Chicagoland this past week. What did we hear from the governor? I know local governments are doing a lot. I'll talk a little bit about the World Cup FIFA tournament that's been plagued by some accusations of racism, but it's a big deal to everybody apparently, and it's growing in the United States. And then we'll talk about your column at courageousthought.com. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back right after these messages. And welcome back to Two Guys on Politics. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And yeah,
And this is Two Guys on Politics, and we're going to talk about the storm that went through our area over the last few days.
Now, your one of your observations was that kind of the media, the weather reporting kind of exaggerated what was happening in some cases, although in other cases it seemed like there was some pretty bad damage. Like if you were in Streeter or Northwest Indiana, mainly, or southern Illinois, further south in Illinois, there's a little bit of turmoil here in Chicago. A lot of lights went out, a lot of trees were down. But there were some, I think they said seven tornadoes, four in Indiana, maybe, and three in Illinois, I think. But you got a sense that they were kind of really hyping this up.
Well, if I know that channels 5 and 7 in Chicago, from approximately a quarter after 4 to 6 o'clock, it was nothing but the impending storm that they covered. There was no other news mentioned whatsoever.
Right.
We could have ended the war in Gaza. We could have
Mhm.
ended the war in Iraq, and I don't think they would have told us about it at all because the information about the weather had the potential of being very, very bad. So there's no question in my mind that they wanted to get that information out to the public. But once again, I believe the way it is presented so often scares an awful lot of people when they don't have to. If they could be more precise on what areas are going to get hit. Now, I felt that my area might very well get hit hard because of the way that they were talking. Uh, but it turns out the worst we had was 10 minutes of winds about 15 to 20 miles an hour. That was it. I don't
Right.
know how it was out your way or at your home, but I may in the minds of the people who lived in my community, the news media far overhyped this.
Well, I know by us, there were some heavy, really strong winds. Fortunately, none of the trees on my property came down, but around us there was a lot. There was this big fear that some of these trees could come down, and I seen a lot of places, in the southwest suburbs, just because I had to drive around, that day in the storm on Friday and Thursday and Friday, just seeing all the damage that was caused. But what was interesting to me was this is kind of a reflection on how the media has changed. And the truth is, the media loves controversy and they love tragedy. They sit there and they talk about, oh, this is tragic, but in reality, inside, they're really excited because this is news that, if they scare you enough, you're going to be watching their news 100%, which explains why instead of, ending the news when it normally ends, they just keep going on and on and on. So there's a fear that gets, and it's kind of interesting because it's self-fulfilling. The media pumps it up and the governments are worried and they say, hey, we can't just ignore this. It may not be so bad, but the media is scaring the public. We better be ready. You don't want to look like you didn't do something. So they get ginned up a little bit too. Now, in our area, I don't think it was bad. The worst we saw were lights, intersection lights going out, um, stoplights, and sadly, a lot of people don't know how to deal with stop signs. At 79th Street and 87th Street, at just watching people, I saw a lot of accidents take place because nobody's patient. We don't respect each other. The courtesy is gone. People seemed angry. I saw a lot of accidents. It was really amazing right in front of me. So I thought that was pretty bad. But what I didn't hear, though, that I thought was interesting was Governor Pritzker. He came out last March, last couple months ago when we had these problems, the weather problems. He didn't come out this time. I didn't hear his voice. He's really getting into ramping up his presidency, I think, his reelection for governor and then his presidency. I was surprised that he wasn't out there at some of these areas.
Yes, I was very surprised. I was beginning to wonder he might have been out of the states in place.
Yeah.
No, at a fundraiser, although He doesn't really need to raise funds. There's no question about that. As long as we mentioned Pritzker, did you happen to see the press conference where our illustrious president called him a slob?
Yeah, that's another thing about Trump, and it's so easy to pick on Trump because his language is terrible. I heard Trump say a lot of crap, the phrase a lot of crap. Now, this is the president. We're journalists and political people talking on a podcast. We say that's crap. Okay, I get it. But when you're president of the United States, do you really use that language when you're talking about people? Do you call women piggies? He has no bounds on the way he uses brutal, below the gutter language to criticize people he doesn't like. And I think it demeans the White House
Oh,
and
it does
our
very
image.
definitely. And I mean, he talked about the Pritzker family, uh, that he's done a lot of deals with the Pritzker family. He and the Pritzker family have made a lot of money. But the slob governor of Illinois has never been involved in any of that because he's too stupid to be involved in it. I mean, I can see some, you know,
Yeah,
fifth, sixth grader in
yeah.
the out in the playground calling somebody he doesn't like those kind of names, but not the president of the United States. But I got off the track over here because
But
Trump is so upsetting to me to what he is doing to America that I try not to miss an opportunity of pointing out some of his failings, hoping that more and more people will realize he certainly is not the person that should be leading us even for the rest of this term.
Well, I think you raise an important point, and I'll tell you why. When you have to refer to name calling, that means that you can't address the facts. So here's a president that refers to name calling to justify his arguments. To me, that says this is a guy that doesn't understand the facts or doesn't care about them. Name calling is a replacement for facts. If you don't want to address facts or because you're not educated enough about something, you call somebody a name and you get in a fight with the person, personality rather than facts. So that's just another sign, in my opinion, that Trump is not a fit leader for this country. He doesn't understand the facts. He doesn't really know what those facts are. And I think his presidency has shown us that he doesn't know and understand what these facts are because no facts have really stood in the way of what he believes and what he claims. It's just very depressing.
It
But
is. I just want to jump in here and say one other thing. Uh, I don't know if you're not much of a sports fan, and I can understand that and appreciate it. I am a sports fan, but I was not watching this game. But I did see highlights of it, and there were seats on the floor on the opposite side of the camera, which I believe went for something between $3,500 and $5,000 a seat. You know who was sitting in one of those seats?
oh,
Joined the game?
oh,
The former mayor of Chicago,
oh, Rahm Emanuel, you're talking about
Rahm Emanuel.
The Spurs and Knicks game, right, in New York?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
listen, I'm a big sports fan, Spurs fan. I'm one of these Easter Sunday sports fans, okay? It's
Okay.
Easter, I go to church.
Well,
Big games, I watch the last 5 minutes of the game. I can't sit through a basketball game. It's not appealing to me. Basketball to me is boring. But I did watch the end of the Spurs Knicks game, and I noticed Rahm Emanuel and all these big shot celebrities sitting along the edge. They were all over there. And that made me not like the Knicks. I really was rooting for the Spurs, who are running behind in this series. They're probably going to lose by the time this airs. But yeah, I did notice that. And it just, Rahm Emanuel, he's
I
really out there promoting himself as a
right.
presidential candidate, not
For
for
all the
mayor, but as a
years he
president.
lived in Chicago,
Mhm.
uh, was mayor of the city of Chicago. I never saw him at one single sporting event. Now, maybe he was there, but he made sure he wasn't that prominent at
Right.
these sporting events, so he'd wind up being on TV. But because he's interested in running for president, he wanted to get that kind of exposure. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, it's just another indication of how our politics, unfortunately, no longer are on the high road. They're
Right.
on the low road.
It's manipulated by image rather than and perception rather than factual information
Hit the
that
nail on the
actually
head.
helps the people. And just because we touched on sports a little bit, I'll just tell you, the World Cup, the U.S. competed, wanted the World Cup. We're one of three countries that are, hosting the World Cup. I think Mexico's the other one. And it's a big deal to a lot of the world, not to us. In America, we do there are some big sports fans, mainly Hispanics, I think mostly. But FIFA, however, has been plagued by this World Cup, has been plagued by accusations of racism. And basically, what's happened is, and I wrote a story about this for Arab News at arabnews.com. Um, the U.S. gave all these sports people months ago visas to come to perform in these games, but when it came time for them, they boarded the plane, they flew 12 hours, they get to O'Hare or LaGuardia Airport, and we turn them back. We say you can't come in, and they're going, "Why? We got our visas. We were vetted." And it seemed like 95% of all the people that were turned back, players, coaches, and fans, were Arab or Muslim, kind of reflecting this racism that I think sometimes our government kind of pushes because it helps fuel their politics, especially on the MAGA side. They love working with the Middle East. They just hate the people there. So,
Uh,
but that was a big story. If somebody wants to read it, they can go to arabnews.com to get
the
that.
only thing I have to say about that is I'm not interested in soccer uh, or football, the way that
Right.
whatever they call it. The only teams I'm interested in is the White Sox, the Bears, and Notre Dame. Other than that, I've retired from following
Yeah.
sports in this country because I think sports has become a such a diversion for people in this country, and there's so many people addicted to it that I think it hurts them in trying to follow what their government is doing. It's such a distraction. They don't have time to follow their favorite sports teams and gamble nowadays on their favorite sports teams and follow what's going on in their local government or state government or federal government. And I think that is very, very detrimental to this country. Now, why these people were turned back, Ray, I don't know. Perhaps you do know. Uh,
No, we
there,
couldn't find, there were no reasons given. They were just told go home. Some of them were held for like 10 hours at the airport. And a lot of coaches were just sent back, a couple Somalis, some Iraqis.
where were the
Um,
Somalis sent back to Minnesota?
Well, for whatever country they actually came from, I think they were coming from other countries through other traveling through these different countries. These are sports teams, where you know uh, they've been vetted. Someone I was talking to a couple people and they said, "Listen, we have to apply for our visas. We got to go through intense vetting. We go through that. We get approval. They give us a slap of approval. We get our ticket. We get on the plane. We sit on the plane for 10 hours. And then when we get here, they turn us away and say they keep you in a room for 10 hours and then send you back to the country you came from, wherever your flight was originating from. There's something wrong with that process. That's where the feeling of racism comes in. But anyway, listen,
Where are they turned back in any other countries? Do you know?
no, not. There hasn't been any reports of that happening because some of these players are some of the biggest players in the Middle East. I mean, if it were just some regular schlepper, some soccer player that nobody knows, nobody would have written about it. But some of the players were some of the biggest players, that play for these Middle East and Arab teams. The leaders, their best players were turned away. And some people think that that was done intentionally to kind of give the U.S. teams some advantage. But I have no idea whether that's true or not, but it fuels that type of attitude. So I don't know. we'll see. Maybe there might be more of this coming up because they got a lot of games,
Yes, there
and
certainly
I'm
is an
like,
awful lot of games, no question about it.
and I'm like you. I'm not a big soccer fan. I just don't find it interesting. I can't
Well,
watch it.
I think the Americans don't find it interesting because there's so little scoring. And the Americans like scoring. They like
Yeah,
to see a lot of runs, a lot of
right.
touchdowns, a lot of baskets made. In soccer, oftentimes they play 60 minutes and no one's scored a goal yet. They have to go into overtime. And I think that's one of the uh, problems with soccer in this country. Amazingly, though, more uh, boys and girls in elementary school are now playing soccer and have
Right.
been playing soccer than were playing basketball or football or baseball. And yet, when they get beyond the elementary school level, in the high school level, they seem to lose interest in it. And if they are skilled athletes at all, they wind up at that time going into football, basketball, uh, uh, and baseball in this country.
Yeah, it's I have no interest in soccer whatsoever at all. Nothing whatsoever. All right, and then finally we got this topic that your column this week at courageousthought.com really kind of talks about a lot of the issues that we talked about earlier in politics and everything. The column is titled Our Land of the Free, Home of the Brave, needs no more Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, or progressives. Tell us about the column, Bill. What moved you
Oh,
to write it, and what's the point that you wanted
well,
to make for
the
readers
point
to
that I'm
understand?
trying to make is that we don't need any people that are Democrats, Republicans, socialists, progressives, anything like that. We need Americans to run for public office. And to me, what is an American? He's a person that thinks of his country first, the people that live in the country, and not his political party. Political parties, as our founding fathers said, were not good for this country. Unfortunately, over the course of the years, parties have become stronger and stronger and stronger. And now the first loyalty of the vast majority of members of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party is to the party and not to this country. So I try to point out in this column why parties have been bad, why it is now up to the American people to get off the couch, to stop watching the basketball, football, baseball game, and get involved in their community as individuals. And hopefully, individuals will come together for causes that will be good for their local community, for their state, and for their federal government, and frankly, for the world. That's really the way America was built in the first place, long before these political parties became so strong that nowadays, if you don't go along with your leadership of your party, you could be out in the next election before you know what happened to you. That's what the article is all about. It's trying to get people to really be Americans, concentrate on what's going on in this country, and try to support ideas that are good for the American dream for everyone.
Yeah, and I think if I understand this correctly, I mean there was a time when political parties were merely the platforms for the ideals that brought people together. So the Republicans might have a little different version of what they wanted to do compared to the Democrats, and the independents and progressives. Although, I think progressives is more of a recent term,
Yes, it
and
is.
words like far right and far left have become more prominent today than they were like 30, 40 years ago. But yeah, it seems like people are more loyal to the party than to the ideals, right? That's what you're arguing, the principles and the policies that that elected officials advocate to make us have a better life here in the United States.
Well, one of the biggest problems is the fact that there's so much money in politics now. And that money, excuse me, that money
Yeah.
is really controlled by the leadership. So the money the leadership gives you help you get elected. It'll help you get reelected if you go along with the party and vote with the party, 100% of the time. If you don't, they're liable to withdraw that money from a reelection campaign, and it makes it extremely difficult for you to win, particularly nowadays when there are no real strong party organizations at the ground level like we had once upon a time here in the Chicagoland area, where we had a lot of different wards and townships that were strong, advocates for the people, and the people that they represented, the people they sent to the city council or the community council and to Congress or to the Senate. They represented the people that sent them there, not the party that gave them money.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. One of the bigger cancers of politics has been the creation of these dark PACs, these secret PACs, these powerful dark money contributions. They're treated differently than, like, if I make a donation to the Republican Party or Democratic Party, the information is there. But these PACs, these individual political action committees, they can collect money from millions from one source, and then they can run an ad to attack you or support you on their own. They do it. They claim it's not in coordination with the candidate. I believe that's a lie. I hardly believe that. And they do whatever they want. And I think that is corrupting it. It takes it away from the candidate and the issues and focuses, on the party, pushing a party. There are a lot of PACs that support the Republicans, a lot of PACs that support Democrats, and it puts the emphasis, I think, in the wrong way. I think it was a good column. I liked it. And
Thank you.
for those people out there, again, it's at courageousthought.com, also hanania.com if you go there. It's a Substack website where we have a lot of readers there now. I think it's a bunch of them, a couple thousand that are reading these. But if you like it, we'd love to hear what you have to say. I'd urge you to go and read Bill's column there at courageousthought.com. Any final thoughts, Bill, on anything? Any other issues bugging you this week?
Yeah, I'm going to really work hard this week in coming up with at least one topic that's positive about what's going on in America, what's
Good luck.
going on in the world, what is happening that's benefiting mankind and not injuring mankind.
Yeah, that's going to be rough. All right. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.